So let's get into it. I'm going to invite Mackenzie up to the stage here. Mackenzie, welcome to our Tactical Tuesday. For those that maybe are hearing about this for the first time, have been stuck under a rock somewhere for the last 5 years, what does SingleKey do? Give us a little glimpse into some of the main features.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good point, Corey. So I'll go quickly over what we have for products and kind of what direction we're moving in and our approach to it as well. And I think they'll be pretty insightful for your listeners. So we have 3 core offerings for landlords. Probably first and foremost is we have a digital application and a comprehensive tenant report. I say it's probably the most comprehensive in the industry. On average, the typical report has between 20 and 30 pages. And 3 to 4 pages of that is strictly credit information. So essentially, we give you all the same tools and information that, say, a bank would have or a car dealership would use before they go and make a loan or a lease on an asset. Next, we have rent collection, which is done through pre-authorized debit. So the same way you might pay a utility bill of a checking account, we offer the same way for you to collect rent, and you can do that for free up to 3 leases per month. And then lastly, it's something pretty new to Canada and actually really North America for that point, is a rent guarantee program. It's kind of like insurance, but essentially we can guarantee rent up to $60,000 or 12 months, whichever comes first, up to $10,000 of tenant vandalism and damage. So it could be any kind of damage that's intentional done by the tenant. And then let's say worst comes to shove and you have to go through the eviction process. We also cover $1,500 of the eviction process. And all that comes down to a premium premium of about 5% per month of your monthly rent. That product really isn't for everyone. So if you're seasoned, you're experienced, you've been at this for a while, you probably actually don't need this product unless you're in one of 2 jurisdictions in Canada where perhaps the timely access to legal resolutions or tribunal is quite lengthy. So obviously in Ontario right now, we're averaging around 7 to 8 months to get a hearing. And if there's no mistakes in the entire process, if there is a mistake in the entire process, it easily gets doubled to almost 2 years. It's crazy. So trying to carry a lease and pay rents with the mortgage that you have out in Ontario at your guys' price point is just, it's pretty daunting to a lot of folks. I think the other appeal factor as well is if you're a net new landlord and you don't know everything, and just the fact that you don't know everything, having that awareness is key. Because this really is a policy to help you kind of sleep at night, get your feet wet into real estate investing without that substantial risk. I know Corey and I, we talked last time about this. Real estate is challenging in the sense that you have a large capital investment that you have to manage upfront, which is usually your down payment, the cost to acquire the property. And at the same time, you're managing someone's expectations who are your clients, your tenants, and as they should have high expectations because they're going to call your property their home. And this teeter-totter balancing act of an entrepreneur that you're trying to do to protect this capital investment, at the same time managing this relationship. And any small mistakes because of the cost of real estate can be really, what's the word I'm looking for? Exaggerated or they really can blow up quite quickly and become quite costly if you're not on top of it.
You know what? It's funny that you say 7, 8 months in Ontario, and it could easily be double because I am dealing with an eviction and a troubled tenant in one of our properties right now, and it's been going on for 2 months, and I'm pulling my hair out. I can't imagine it's something like this going on for 2 years. That would be crazy. But great to have these types of things in place. So if we are in a jurisdiction where it's different or difficult, then we have a little bit of insurance. Like you mentioned, we can sleep easier at night as an investor, as a property owner. So I have personally, obviously, we've used it several times, and it is the only thing that I recommend, guys, as far as, if you're doing tenant verification or you want to pull a credit report, you got to do any of those kind of stuff. The place you go is SingleKey. Okay. Simple as that. Okay. So now let's get into some of the new features, kind of behind the scenes stuff, Mackenzie, and show us what's coming down the pipeline.
So we've revamped our entire reporting. We've added more data points for you guys to consider. Our job at SingleKey here is to give all the different data points as much as possible to you as the property manager, the investor, or the small landlord to make the most informed decision possible before you select your next tenant. Most of the work, if you're new to this industry and you're figuring it out, and people that are well seasoned will probably nod in agreement, is or 9% of your work is done upfront when you select that tenant. That tenant, when it comes to tenancy, meaning that once you've got the right person in place, checking in, doing inspections, doing repairs, coming over for a lease renewal, and perhaps some customer appreciation around Christmas time or their birthday. That's all pretty easy. It's very streamlined. But if you get the wrong person in place, it blows this whole tenancy out of proportion and makes the challenges that we hear and see on the news and what people talk about when they think about the stereotypical bad tenants or the horrors of being a landlord in mainstream media. So that's our approach here, is to give you guys the most number of data points. As we look at the top here, this is a mock-up environment, meaning not all the features are quite functional, but we've made a number of changes here. So across the top, we've got a couple of quick summaries, some huge data points. So obviously the Equifax credit score. This is a great tool to have. It's a great litmus test to see where this tenant is at. But something to keep in mind, a good credit score or a bad credit score doesn't always dictate the financial habits of a tenant. And what I mean by that is you could have a great tenant that is perhaps going through a huge life event. Perhaps they just got laid off or they're coming off a divorce and they've had a period of not being able to pay bills. That will be reflected in their credit score, but they might still be great overall. But just again, they can't pay because of that situation. Or vice versa, you might have someone who's just generally missed payments across the board. And that might be more of a red flag of something you want to avoid because they're not great at managing their finances. So we give you the credit score. We give you something called a debt payments. And this is basically all their debt obligations summed up into one number they have a month. This could be their credit cards, their car loans, whatever it might be. This is something to take in consideration when you look at the rent to income ratio. Meaning if you look at how much money is left off of their paycheck minus their debt payments, you hopefully should be ideally 35% or less. You can go a little bit more, maybe closer to 40 nowadays. We're seeing just with the rise in costs for everyone dealing with, that ratio kind of get adjusted. But really the rule of thumb is about 35% of the rent should match their income. A cool new feature that we're going to have releasing probably later this year or perhaps early next year is we've gone to a tenant first approach, meaning that you could have tenants go and apply in your rental property and bring in hand a SingleKey credit report that you'll get full access to. Because that tenants can bring you credit reports now, you need to understand that information that you're looking at is in fact authentic and it hasn't been photoshopped or changed. Hence why we have this QR code. So you can scan this QR code, it'll get redirected back to the SingleKey website, and then you can verify that this report is original and all the information contained in it is accurate, which is a pretty cool feature. And I would be pretty excited if the tenant came to my property, if they already had their credit report in hand, it would streamline and get them to the front of the line, put them quite favorably in my eyes.
Let me just clarify, because I got a question there. That would be the same. So let's say somebody comes, I'm doing a showing. Instead of me going through the application process or having them go to SingleKey to fill out an application, they're essentially coming to me with a filled out application already, right?
Exactly.
Like I have access to all the information that I would have on an application. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, you're completely right. The only differences will be like some of these calculations are done based on what the rent's being charged. If the tenant comes to you with a report that is not tied to a property or a landlord, we won't have that calculation. But what we're going to allow you guys to do is once they grant you access to see it, and you can punch in your numbers to get those metrics updated. But for the most part, all the core information that is provided from Equifax and what the tenants put in on their application, you'll have access to, which is pretty cool. That just would streamline the process, allow you to move quicker, especially if they're a high quality tenant. I find that really good tenants move quickly. They find places faster, which makes a lot of sense. So giving you the ability as a landlord to move quicker allows you to acquire, close in and secure those good tenants faster.
We do have a question from one of our Facebook users, and that is, we use your products all the time. I'll just remove this so that our faces are there. We ran into a situation yesterday. We have international students that would like to rent one of our properties. Will SingleKey pull any info on them, or will it only work for North America?
We actually have this coming down. So it's going to be probably, actually, I don't have an ETA, so I don't want to mispromise, but we're working with a couple of companies to do exactly that, do international credit checks. And actually, that's a really kind of neat segue back to that rent guarantee as well. Is I know this might be more in Ontario. We haven't seen it too much here in Alberta, unless Corey, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's so competitive in Ontario in the GT area. I've heard tenants offer 6 months, 12 months of rent. I'll pay up front just to secure a place, especially if they're new Canadians and they don't have that history, right? They're kind of a ghost. They're unknown. Because the rent guarantee can be a co-signer or a guarantor for a tenant, they can also take the rent guarantee and come and apply at your property, Corey, and say, hey, I'm Mackenzie Wilson. I just moved to Alberta here. I've got no Canadian credit history, but I have this company, SingleKey, and they'll guarantee my rent up to $60,000 for the next 12 months. Would you be interested in taking me on? It's a pretty appealing factor. And then the cool thing for that tenant is if they're paying 12 months of rent up front, and let's just say in Ontario numbers, let's call that $3,000 a month. That's what, $36,000 they're paying up front. Imagine what they could do to use that money to get their life started quicker and rebuild a brand new life here in Canada. And so that's kind of how we're trying to position and use the product to make it better for both parties to participate.
Yeah. And exactly. They got to live somewhere. They have to be accepted by a landlord somewhere in most cases. So having that ability is amazing. And I love the point that you talked about with that rent guarantee. If the tenant can come to you saying, I'm approved in this basis, would we take them as a tenant? Well, assuming that they don't have a criminal record and all of those other things, well, absolutely. This is somebody that we would definitely look at. So I think a lot of people in the comments here are saying, yes, this would be very valuable.
So a couple new things we've added in the quick application summary. It gives you a breakdown the number of occupants, including dependents. So when we say children, we mean the under the age of majority in your province. Pets, gives you a quick count on that. Vehicles, if you're in a parking constraint type of property, perhaps you're renting out a condo. More of these tidbits of information right in the first page, you can quickly see and understand who you're looking at. Because obviously, if you got a single person versus a family of four renting the same size property, there'll be a difference in their wear and tear. So we're trying to give you that ability to see that quickly. Same thing as well. We're doing joint applications now, which is super cool. So right now, the way SingleKey works is you guys do single applications on every person applying the property. And by the way, a best practice is you want every adult that is over the age of majority to be on your lease. In case if you have to, when things go wrong, you have the ability to go after more bank accounts for rent arrears and damages. So we always recommend credit check everyone that's going to be on your lease. So when that happens today, it's all done as separate applications. With this tool coming up, we're going to allow you to link a party, and that's going to actually change your metrics. So we could have a personal income of 45,000 here, but the household income could be 110,000, depending on how many people are on the application, which would make a lot more sense for you to do your rent to income ratio on. So that's coming down the pipe. We've done a quick summary of things. And the way I would use this section here is this is a good indicator of where you need to dive in deeper and look through the details of the report as you go through it. And this is kind of a high-level quick check for you. So again, we've got their credit score. If there's any collections, bankruptcies, again, all these are kind of quick checks. All these categories can be broken out further, and you see in more detail further down in the report. The other thing we've done too is we've made it more clear to understand what is tenant supplied information, meaning what is the information or fields that they've filled out on the application versus data or metrics that we're giving back to you, say like a Equifax credit score, which does not come from the tenant. So this is now your rental application. So kind of the basic stuff, age, birth date, email address, all the basic contact information. What we do, and this is kind of like a nice to have, and I always say use it with a grain of salt, is we do an automated email previous and current landlord check. So for every rental history they put on their application and the contact information they use, we'll send an automatic quick 2-minute survey for the landlord to fill out. If we get a hit back, it gets populated into here. Now, just so you understand the context of this information that you're looking at, if you get back a 5-star glowing review with like unicorns and sunshine, take it with a grain of salt. Because if the tenant's gone and perhaps put a friend or a bogus reference in to help boost their score, that's who could be responding. Because we don't have the way to check that information. We're providing all you guys the tools to make the most informed decision possible. But if this landlord reference comes back and it comes back truthful and it's not shining, or if it's perhaps even a bit negative, then I'd be comfortable to say that you probably have a realistic or truthful reference that you're looking at, and then you can use that as part of your overall evaluation. This green check mark here matches the Equifax data I'm super excited about. So this is one of the best practice or pro tips I used to teach other landlords the first time they're looking at a credit scores is if the address provided by the tenant on the application matches the reported address at Equifax, and reported addresses are ones that they've used for billing in the past. So perhaps they had a cell phone bill at this address. That would show up as a reported address in Equifax. And if we get a match across the two, you're going to get this check mark here. Now, if you don't get that match, it's not the end of the world, because truthfully, even on my own personal Equifax score, I have inaccurate data. So it's not the end of the world, but it's definitely a good bonus and a very strong like green flag that you're on the right track if you're seeing the information match. And your whole job as a landlord is to find all these data points of truth. And the more positive indicators that someone is telling the truth, and you can verify that through third-party sources or other ways that make sure that that data is true, the more confidence you have that the overall report is accurate, and then therefore you can make that informed decision. On that note, quickly, if you're doing a background or if you're doing a landlord reference call, you should be doing two things. One, if you're a small landlord, I know property managers are held to a little bit higher standard, but the ones that have a few properties that run their own shop, I would call the landlord reference and pretend to be a tenant. Say, hey, I'm calling about your rental properties. Don't introduce yourself. Don't give them your name. And just wait for that initial feedback on the phone call. See if they're truthful. See if they stutter or hum or haw. You might have someone being like, "Oh, that doesn't make sense." But if you go and start the phone call and you say, "Hey, I'm Mr. Wilson or I'm Mackenzie. I'm the landlord at so and so that your tenant just applied that," you've queued up that person on the phone to potentially lie to you if they're not a truthful reference. Yeah. And then the next one is, once you're going through the questions, ask open-ended questions or change the facts and see if they catch you in a lie. So you're going to change the move-in dates and the move-out, the utilities or the rent, which, by the way, you should be asking for the previous lease when you do your screening, because that information presented in the previous lease is how you're going to determine when you do your landlord references. You can do checks to see if you're talking to the right person or not.
This is from Nand. He is asking, do you have a rent reporting feature?
Yeah, so if you do use our rent collection tool, we are in the process with working with Equifax to embed that in. They've asked it for the information, it's queued up, but the reason why I'm saying it's in process, so technically, yes, we have it. You won't see it on tenants' applications yet, because there's a little bit of compliance and hoops we have to jump through to actually have Equifax put that into their database. So it's yes, but work in progress. And the quick thing too is, current landlord could be motivated for whatever reason to perhaps get rid of a tenant. So I always take their reference with a grain of salt. Your gold is really the two previous landlords. Current employment, pretty straightforward as well. They put all this information in. And again, if you get this verified check mark, that means that the employer that the tenant works at matches the employer listed on the Equifax credit score. So that's a win.
Do you know, like, roughly how many times this gets matched? Like, is it matched 10% of the time? Is it matched 80%?
Yeah, I don't have numbers yet from a SingleKey perspective, but just from my own personal experience, and I've probably run, I don't know, north of 50 checks. It's probably not as common, just because employment does change a lot more frequently these days before it gets reported into the credit bureau. Even at that note, my personal one, I know it's, again, before I came on full time with SingleKey, I was at TELUS for 8 years. And it still showed a job back before TELUS in like 2013 as one of my current employers. And this was like 2019 when I checked it. So again, if you don't get it, I wouldn't worry about it. But if you do get a match, then you've got a really high level of confidence the information is accurate, which is always great. We allow them to upload files. Oh, this is a cool feature. So some feedback that is not in here that will be in the final report is people have requested that they want a generic catch-all document upload thing. And so we said, okay. And it was a really good point. Someone brought up, well, what if they're a new Canadian and they got a work permit they want to share with you? Or if they are a tenant and their previous landlord gave them like a letter of reference, a positive review, then why not upload these documents to give you more confidence as the when you're making your decision? So that part is changing, is coming, because right now we allow photos of previous pets, proof of employment through pay stubs, letter of employment, photo ID, or photocopies of photo ID, so passports and driver's license and all that good stuff. The way you should be evaluating a self-employed person, they're kind of like a business. So you need to be looking at you look at a T1 and you look at the NOA, the notice of assessment. And the difference between the two is the T1 can be self-generated. I mean, I can submit whatever I want on my tax return. But the notice of NOA is what the CRA is their evaluation. It's their outcome of reviewing your tax return and their determination of what you're paying for tax. You want to make sure that those two who look similar, because someone can easily go and create another new T1 with new incomes and all other stuff. So if the number fields don't match, like that total income and all that kind of stuff, from the NOA to their T1, then you have possibly fake information. So we've got a breakdown of the party applying. They've got dependents, a guarantor. So now we have a guarantor field as well. This is another new feature I'm really excited about. So Before, if a tenant, like let's say it's a student moving out for the first time, they need their parents to co-sign to get into the rental, we would make the parent fill out the same application, but it was a little bit higher friction and it was a little bit difficult for them because we're asking them if they're bringing pets to the rental. Well, that's not very applicable to someone who's co-signing for their son or daughter. So we have a Cosign Flow now that streamlines it, makes it really easy for the cosigner to go through. A pro tip as well, you should be credit checking the cosigner because essentially they're getting onto the lease to help sponsor that individual since they don't have enough history on their own. So you can go after them should things go awry. So we've got more detailed information on the pets, the age, and we've got images as well. And I think this is really pretty important because I know if pets aren't managed well, they can do a ton of damage. And I've seen the countless stories of houses essentially destroyed because animals have been left unmonitored. Why I think this information is really important for your documentation trail is, let's say you have a tenant move in, they have an older dog at 8 years old, or a cat, for example, and it passes away. You want to know that if they're bringing a new one, because they should be getting written permission for every pet that comes to the household and not trying to pass off as one of the original pets, which is why I think this is very important to have documented for you. Of course, vehicle information. This is more important if you're in a townhouse or a condominium where there's assigned parking. You might have to give this to your condo board. But then here, this is kind of cool as well, this is like a personal message from the tenant. They can kind of do their sales pitch. Why should you just select me over the other tenants that apply on your property? I'm a med student and I'm on my 4th year. I'm focusing on my studies and blah, 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 or whatever their pitch is to you that make them a really good candidate for your rental. And then here's the documentation that they have uploaded. And then the credit report. This is brand new. This kind of metric graph. What I like about it too as well is if you're brand new, you've never seen a credit score before. How do you know if 650 is good or bad, or 715 or 559 or whatever it might be? This gives you really perspective of the different ranges of the credit scores across Canada, so you can help evaluate where your tenant sits. So then we have a bunch of breakdown of the different information off of the credit report. So we've got dates reported, so consumer statements, warnings if they are. And so if there is things worth seeing, they'll be fully expanded in the report. If there are no hits or warnings, then these sections get minimized to shorten it to make it easier to read as you go through the property.
What does it cost to get this report if I'm a landlord and I want to get all of this information on a tenant that is applying for my property? What is the cost for that?
So retail is it's pay per use, so it's $24.99 or $25. But I believe you guys got an exclusive. I think it's 20% off. That $19.99 sound about right? It's an ongoing, continuous discount. Use as many times as you want. Doesn't go away. So you're saving 20% on every report you run. Obviously, if you're looking at a large number of applicants coming into your property, but what I recommend as a best practice is get it shortlisted to 2 or 3 parties that you want to run through the report. Also, you can see yourself spending quite a bit of money. Another thing that some landlords have done, and I've done this a couple times as well, is you can offload the costs to the prospective tenant, and you can say upon selection or being chosen, I'll reimburse you the cost of the application. Oh yeah, so these addresses, these are the ones off of Equifax. This is where we can do that cross-reference on the report, or I'm sorry, on the application from the tenant to see if the supplied addresses do match each other. And we have a bunch of info buttons too. So I can imagine a lot of these different fields might be kind of new to a lot of people if you've never seen a credit report before. We're tying in really clear explainers of what the different pieces of information are that you're looking at and what the results mean, if they are good or bad, because a blank result might be okay or might be not a good thing if something's not coming back. So it really depends. So yeah, so this is really cool as well. So this debt summary, what we've done now is we've created these late buckets, but this comes back to my example where if you don't have a tenant may not have the perfect credit score, but they could be a diamond in the rough and a really good tenant if they're going through, again, that life event. These are just these summary sections. You can actually look at every trade item or credit product, so every credit card, savings account, whatever it might be, and you can, well, it's not a savings account, but you can look at the late payments for anything that has an ongoing billing. And you can go back, I think we go back quite a bit, number of years back, depending on how long they've had that product, and you can see all of their payment history. So if you've got someone that has a bunch of late payments in a span of like 2 to 3 months or 6 months, and then before and after it's clear, likely that's a life event. And well, you should always inquire more and just understand what's happening to that tenant at that point in time. But likely it could turn out to be perhaps that job loss or divorce that they're going through. And they would be good individuals where their credit score has probably been damaged, but they'll make a great tenant. And usually you get those ones in, they're very loyal. They'll stick with you a lot longer because you've given the chance to kind of keep moving forward here in life. But what we've done here is we've got these late buckets. So what this really means is if I've got a 1 here, I've been late once over 30 days. If I have a check mark here, it's the number of times I've been late over 60 days, how many months I've let a bill, or how many bills I've let go past 60 days in arrears. Same thing with 90 days plus.
Kind of what I'm getting from this is almost every piece of information that you're going to want on a prospective tenant is on this report somewhere. And you have detailed information. You have information that's verified by third parties. You have ways that co-applicants can co-apply onto the same application, and guarantors can as well. All the information you need to make a decision as to whether you're going to accept that tenant or not is there. And for Fearless members, it costs roughly $20. So is it worth $20 for SingleKey to supply you with all this information? I mean, back in the day, we had people physically handwrite on our application form all of this information. We could verify some of it. Sometimes you can't read the handwriting, or they get one of the numbers wrong, and then you're going back and forth, and it just becomes a big hassle, especially if you got a whole bunch of applications coming in at the same time. This is just time saving, simplified. If you're an investor, if you're a landlord, this is what you use now.
What I really like is I go through, I do a viewing. You're at my property core. You go, hey, Mackenzie, I love the house. What's next? I want to rent from you. I go, great. I grab your name and email, or I should probably already have it if it's come through, Rent Fast or wherever listing platform. I flip you a link. You go online, you fill the whole application. You know your information better than I do. So the chances of you making a typo versus me is greatly less. You fill your information. It saves my time. And as soon as they hit send, we guarantee you get the report in less than 5 minutes. And actually, typically, it's even less than a minute for all of our reports. So these are all the different mortgage. These are all the different kind of credit products. So a Bell account, mortgage, credit card, whatever it might be. They've got color code sections that kind of help you out. We've got a breakdown of what the R codes mean, which is just like a standardized what status this product is in, to quickly help you kind of see how they're managing the finances, the inquiries, foreign inquiries, bankruptcies, collections, all these good stuff, judgments. Just a word of note on judgments and all these other things. We provide an online record search, but it is by no means the silver bullet. And what I mean by that is not every jurisdiction lists their records or their database online. So for example, in Alberta, we have the RTDRS, Residential Tenancy Dispute Resolution Service. All those hearing results aren't available online, which is crazy because those are results directly from disputes between landlords and tenants, but we don't have access to that to put into a report. Again, if you get something back, that's great, dig into it further. But if a zero search comes back, it doesn't mean there's nothing out there. So I just want to put that important caveat out there.
And you just said here, I had an aha moment. I don't actually have to hand out application forms anymore with all these new features.
No, you just flick links out. It's great. And we have a pre-screened form too that you can give out first. You can embed it into your ads. And it's kind of like a little bit a basic customer management tool for landlords. You can get all your tenants' applications in there, and then you can pick and choose which ones you want to push through and actually do the paid process for the application. We have a social media scan. Again, this is nice to have. You should be fact checking all these yourselves, especially if there's common spelling of names. There's a possibility you can get a mismatch here. But I mean, again, we're serving you guys all the information to streamline your due diligence. It's pretty friendly. You can do it as long as they can use a phone in this day and age. If they can go to websites, they should be able to fill out our application. If not, we do have a customer service number. You can have them call our CS team, and they can help them out. Or again, you have the choice. You can print off your own application, or we can print off our application as a PDF and then do the traditional paper route as well, if that is warranted. But the one thing I want to cover before we wrap up, and then we'll leave a few minutes for Q&A here, is we have a new ID verification service. And I think this is super powerful, especially for landlords that manage properties that they're not local to. And what this is the tenant will go through, they'll upload a picture or a selfie of themselves. They'll upload a picture of their ID, and then upload a third picture of them holding their ID with their picture or their face in the same picture. And we use this third-party plugin called Vouch. It will scan the picture and the driver's license and actually tell you if it's the person, if that person is in fact the person in the license or the government-issued ID. So pretty powerful tool. And why I really like about this is I've noticed I've done viewings, and then I've got an application like a week later, and I can't remember what that person looks like. I remember what that person looks like, but then I look at their ID they've uploaded to the report, And I'm like, is that the same person I saw like 5 days ago? And they look like completely different. They've lost like 50 pounds. They've changed their hair color, or they've cut their hair, whatever it might be. And I'm struggling to recognize if this is the same person. So another pro tip is you should, if you get to the point where you're signing a lease, you should physically take a look at their identification. But this is a good backup to have to ensure that you've got great documentations.
Okay, well, there we go. Thanks for coming on tonight, Mackenzie. I really appreciate it. You gave all of our viewers a good outlook as to what SingleKey has to offer, and I'm very confident that our viewers here are going to be using it. So, okay, we'll see you soon. Thanks for joining us, guys, and have a great week, and we'll see you next week for another Tactical Tuesday. All right, take care.